I would like to call to order the June meeting of the Morrisville Planning and Zoning Board. Thank you for joining us. If you will join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, Chairman, we do not.
I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Anyone?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do we have a second? Okay, Sushma, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Narki, did you vote? I did vote. Okay. You voted in this. So at this time, because Sanjay is not here, both Narki and Sushma will be voting members until he arrives. So would you like to enter a vote on? Okay, so it's unanimous. Thank you. Any changes to the minutes from the last meeting or comments? No. If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that's unanimous also. Thank you. So we can move right on to number 5.
Good evening, board members. My name is Mark Spagnoli. I'm the Director of Engineering for the town of Morrisville. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Before I get into my presentation, I just want to say thank you for your service. I actually recently got on the planning board for Apex, and I can see how much work it is. It takes time to review the documents and be prepared to listen and engage with the items that are before you. So thank you so much for your service.
All right, so they have a ringer on the Planning and Zoning Board in Apex now.
Yeah. So let's jump right in. So this presentation is about a request for an encroachment agreement. The developer, Spark Infrastructure, has come to us with a request for actually 3 encroachments over the public right-of-way. And we're going to go over the details this evening and look for your recommendation. So just a little bit of background. Spark Development, some of you or most of you may know, is located off the McCrimmon Parkway extension, just east of Airport Boulevard. It encompasses over 100 acres of land. Some of it's already been developed with some existing buildings and a parking garage. The development has moved to a new programming option, which the tenant will need the use of the right-of-way with some encroachment with bridges to convey materials from one building to another, and also for employee use to go from one building to another. The bridge connections, as I mentioned, are proposed to cross the public right-of-way, and we do have a process for that. It's in our UDO section 2.25 right-of-way encroachment agreement approval, and I'll go through the details of that. In the process, we've already completed our pre-application conference. We received an application from the applicant, and we're recommending the review by the Planning and Zoning Board at this time. So just additional orientation, just an aerial map of the area. Outlined in red is basically the entire development area for Spark. Some of the buildings, as you can see, are already existing. It's just east of Airport Boulevard and adjacent to the McCrimmon Parkway extension to the south. So looking at this rendering, this helps orient us a little further. You have the location of the 3 bridges. There's one here that connects the parking deck to Origin 3. That's going to be a pedestrian bridge. You have another one being proposed here. It's a conveyor bridge. It's connecting Origin 2 and Origin 3. And then you have another conveyor bridge that connects Origin 1 to Origin 2. And we'll get into some more details with that. So we have some structural elevations of the bridges, and the applicant has a presentation as well that's going to provide some additional renderings, make it a little more user-friendly to see. But this is actually the proposed pedestrian bridge. It's going to be a steel structure cladded with glazing, so from the outside you'll just basically see a glass bridge that overlaps the public right-of-way. And you can kind of see the internal section of it where it's made out of steel structure. And this is a pedestrian bridge just so people can get from one building to the other. And then there'll be two conveyor bridges, very similar in design. They're also steel structures, but these will be cladded with some kind of panels to match the architectural style of the existing or the proposed buildings at Spark. And like I said, there'll be some better renderings that you can see in a few minutes. And again, this is the internal structure of the conveyor bridge and our steel bridge structure. So when you get into the details of the UDO, it tells you in 2.5.25, it outlines the procedures and requirements that we have to go through. So we've had our pre-application conference that's been completed internally with staff and with the applicant. They've submitted a submittal to us with documentation. They've completed that process. We've completed our review and recommendation of the encroachment, and we scheduled the public notices of the meetings, and now we're here at Planning and Zoning Board for review and recommendation. And after that, subsequent to that, we'll go to Town Council for their review and decision making. So let's get into some of the details of 2.5.25. The review standards are that it complies with applicable district standards for zoning and accessory uses and structures. It has to comply with all other applicable standards in this ordinance. It has to comply with our engineering, design, and construction manual as well. It has to comply with all other town ordinances, state and federal laws as well, and complies with all requirements and conditions of approval of any prior development permits or approval. So that it's got to go through those series of requirements, and town staff will continue to make sure that it follows all the requirements before we issue any kind of permits for the encroachments. It also has to meet the section 4.3.3, which is related to accessory uses and structures. There's a number of details there. It's got to comply, obviously, with the right-of-way encroachments of 2.5.24b. Be located in a right-of-way maintained by either a homeowner association or a property owner association. In this case, it'll be maintained by the development. They have to have written support, which they own the entire development, so they have support to develop the encroachment. It's got to have to meet the minimum setbacks from curbs, which it will. Prohibit pedestrian access unless the proposed structure is located in the right-of-way of a main local street classified access way, which it does. Be decorative and aesthetically consistent with the adjoining property, which it will be, and be maintained at a condition comparable to the original installation or construction, which we built that language into the agreement. So just to summarize and go over some of the main terms that we outlined in the actual agreement that we've drafted so far. The bridge has to have a minimum height clearance of 16 feet. That meets all the state and federal and local requirements. The improvements obviously be permitted and inspected by the town of Morrisville. There'll be annual bridge inspections that are required of the development, and they'll have to provide documentation of that each year. The bridges shall be designed to ensure pedestrians, materials, equipment, or other means of transport that cross the bridges stay within the confines of the bridges, so they can't have things sticking out of the bridges. Everything has to stay within those bridges. Any road closures and so forth have to be approved by the town prior to any closure during the construction. They're responsible for all the maintenance, upkeep, and any repairs to the bridges. Obviously, the town would not be responsible for the upkeep and maintenance or any liability of those bridges. They have no other ownership over the public right-of-way. They can't do anything above it, aerial-wise, or below it without any other permits from the town. The actual bridge will remain private property. We established emergency requirements in case there's an accident or some kind of damage or somebody hits the bridge in some way, shape, or form. We've outlined details on how they need to contact the town and how they need to work together with the town. They have to carry liability insurance throughout the duration in perpetuity while the bridge is over the public right-of-way. They have to hold harmless and indemnify the town. And the agreement will be recorded and run with the property in perpetuity. Okay, so based on the requirements outlined in the UDO, staff is recommending approval of the encroachment agreement with Spark Infrastructure for the 3 bridges proposed to cross the public right-of-way. Our town legal counsel has reviewed and approved the proposed agreement, so that all those parts have been established. And we're here to answer any questions you have from staff. And after that, I'm happy to have the applicant come up and give us a short presentation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. I'm Matthew Carpenter with Parker Poe, 301 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh. Here this evening on behalf of the developer, Trinity Capital Advisors. I've got a couple folks with me tonight. Shane Herman with Kinley Horn, our civil engineer, and also Gerritsen Brown with Redgate, who's overseeing the overall construction project. So we appreciate your time tonight, and we appreciate staff helping us work through the agreement and get to this point. As Mark mentioned, this is a very technical, narrow request that's part of a much larger Spark project that's been going on for several years, all the way back to at least 2020. And so as Mark mentioned, this is an encroachment agreement to allow 3 bridges on the property to serve the development. If you've seen in the news, a large tenant has taken over 1 million square feet of space there for a Pokemon card manufacturing facility. And so as you'll see in the presentation, these bridges are very specifically needed for their operation of the campus. And I wanted to share this slide. Mark went through these standards in great detail, but it's a little bit of an unusual request, an encroachment agreement. It's not something that goes before boards often, and so I just wanted to add some context for that. It's not rezoning that you would often see where you're approving uses on the property. Zoning for this project was done several years ago. It's also not any sort of quasi-judicial approval that you would review, like a variance or a special use permit. Really, what we're asking for is an administrative decision to approve the encroachment agreement. And the way the UDO is set up is if the agreement and the structures meet these 5 standards, then it should be approved. And so I'll spend my time, sort of going through each one of those and how we've been sure to meet those standards. And so the first, let me go back one. The first requirement in UDO section 2.525C is that the structure accessory to the development complies with Article 3 of the UDO and the standards in section 4.3. So Article 3 sets forth the general zoning districts, the use table. And so our current zoning here is business activity center with the gateway overlay. The proposed use, manufacturing light, I say proposed, but also the current use, is a permitted use in that zoning district. And then the bridges that we're talking about will serve that principal use. And so we're clearly compliant with Article 3. And then Section 4.3 that Mark also went through lists several other standards, the most important of which is the requirement for a right-of-way encroachment agreement. And that's what we've been spending our time on, working with the town attorney. The town attorney prepared the initial draft, then sent it to us, and we went back and forth. And the agreement basically says that the property owner tenant can construct these bridges in the public right-of-way, above the public right-of-way, under some very strict conditions. And we've fashioned this because we do have 3 separate bridges. I think previous encroachment agreements in Mooresville have been for things like neighborhood signs or much smaller encroachments. And so what we've done is structured this agreement so that the initial agreement approves the 3 encroachments, but then each of the bridges will still be reviewed and approved in detail by town staff before they can be constructed. And so this is just really the first step to allow the bridges. And there are provisions in the agreement to protect the town and to ensure public safety. That's, as I understand it, really the number one concern with encroachments like bridges is that what happens in an emergency. And so the agreement outlines that the property owner is responsible for maintenance. And also the owner, if you'll see in the agreement, indemnifies the town from all costs and liabilities related to the construction, use, or repair of the bridges. So that's sort of legalese, but it basically means if someone sues the town for something that happened with the bridge, that the property owner will be responsible for that. And then we do have several, as Mark mentioned, architectural renderings that I'll show here. These are preliminary, but I want to be clear, the architecture will comply with the architecture of the surrounding buildings. So each one of these bridges will be designed with the building by the architects for the operator, and complement the architecture of those buildings. And so this is the pedestrian bridge. You can see that there's a lot of glass here, obviously, because it is oriented towards moving employees from one building to the next. And then there are two material bridges, and these look a little different because they're really a much more functional utilitarian style bridge. They're meant to convey supplies, manufacturing equipment back and forth between buildings. And really the idea, Garrettson can speak more to this if you have questions, but the idea is to not interrupt traffic in and out of the site, and provide a safe way to transport materials there to support the facility. So this is another rendering of the materials bridge. This is another rendering that we thought was a little easier to understand because it is sort of from the parking lot view. You can see the road there, slightly to the right of your screen going under the bridge. This is, again, another view of the materials bridge, and an initial design. Same thing here, but from a different angle. Again, just trying to provide some perspective of what this might look like. I know when I first heard, we're going to have three bridges, I couldn't really conceptualize what those look like. They're not all that common, so we thought it was helpful for that reason. And then just to summarize, we have met all the requirements in UDO Section 2.5, 25C for approval of the encroachments. As I mentioned, it complies with the use sections of the UDO, and it will comply with all other standards of the ordinance. As I mentioned, this is a long, a multi-phase project. I know a lot of the buildings are built, and so there was a site plan approval originally in 2022 for the buildings that are out there now. And so obviously, as part of the site plan process, those buildings had to meet all UDO requirements. And then for any new buildings on the property, we're going through the minor modification process to also have those buildings approved for compliance with the UDO. And so there are a lot of different levels there where we have to show plans and compliance to town staff to get approvals. Same thing with 3, the engineering, the design and construction manual. We're not asking for any relief from any of those requirements, and so we'll have to meet those. Same with the general catch-all in item 4, all other applicable town ordinances and state and federal laws. And then finally, complies with all requirements and conditions of approval of any prior development plan. So again, going back to that original site plan approval, and then the minor modifications that have come in after that, we're working with town staff. Engineers are working with town staff daily to make sure that new buildings and new proposals meet the requirements of previously approved plans. And so we appreciate your time tonight, and with that, we respectfully request your recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess any questions? Arthur?
Yeah, I have just one question. You kind of hit on it a little bit, but can you speak a little bit more on the operational benefits that are achieved by connecting the building with bridges rather than ground circulation?
Absolutely. I'll have Garrettson speak to that.
Good evening, everyone. Garrettson Brown, Redgate. Few primary reasons for the bridges. One, this is a 24-hour facility, so they are producing kind of round the clock. So there's a few things. Security is a primary concern. You've probably heard in the news about all the theft from kind of large scale. So they, to the extent they can, they want to try to keep everything contained. So that's one thing, is kind of full kind of internal, control there. Another is, Matt touched on it, but trucking, right? You don't want to take it across the campus multiple times, and there is a large amount. And also each stage of the buildings, Origin 3, Origin 2, Origin 1, they all serve different functions, right? Origin 3 is primarily where the process happens, the printing. Origin 2's packaging. Then there's some package in Origin 1, and ultimately where it's distributed out. So it really is just kind of a constant flow of material and just trying to manage and keep it internal so it doesn't impact the broader neighborhood.
Chris?
It sounds almost like it's more people than it is conveyor belts. And I just want, maybe it's more towards Mark, with this being designed, not just insulated panels for conveyor belts. This is gonna be people access, where I'd expect some windows and some different construction.
So I can touch on that a little bit. So yeah, for one is primary. I mean, yes, one is fully a bridge for people. That's the parking deck to Origin 3. This is a large facility with a large employment base, and I mentioned it runs 24 hours a day. So they wanted to keep their staff safe and out of the roads and crossing right-of-ways to the extent they can. So that's what that one serves. The others are the other two, the one going from Origin 3 to Origin 2 and 2 to 1. That is purely material use. I mean, it is going to be set up to have some sort of maintenance corridor for, if the conveyors break down, but it's not going to be used to convey people in those other two that will be connecting the buildings. That's going to be purely conveyor or some sort of conveyor system that would move the product from building to building.
Okay, so it's not palletized, it's going on a conveyor belt.
It's
Conveyor
conveyor.
belt.
It'll likely be palletized on a conveyor or some combination thereof.
Okay.
The question I had was regarding the inspections. Who is allowed to perform the inspections? I mean, is it just any random person? Do they have to be a registered engineer? And is the owner required to implement any items that come up from those inspections, and in what amount of time?
So are you referring to the annual inspections once it's constructed?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are required to be done by a structural engineer licensed, and the report will have to be furnished to the town on an annual basis.
Okay, but what if, I don't know, things change 25 years from now, Pokemon cards aren't popular? Are they required to implement recommendations from the inspection? And if so, in what amount of time?
So the encouragement agreement does talk about any repairs or maintenance that are required that are an outcome of the inspections, and it runs in perpetuity. So they would have to make those repairs.
I mean, so they're required. I mean,
It's required.
It says they're responsible for them, but there's a lot of buildings in Florida right now that can't be sold because people are responsible for fixing them, but they don't have the budget to. So I guess my question is like, are they legally required to make the corrections?
It's required in the agreement that they make the corrections.
Okay, what if they don't?
I can't answer that off memory. I'd have to look it up. Sorry.
Touch on that.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a provision addressing replacement or relocation, which I think is similar. So we are required to maintain it, and I think if it was in disrepair, then the town would likely revoke the encroachment agreement. But then there is a separate provision in paragraph 9 about the agreement does not approve any future full replacement or relocation of the bridge improvements and will automatically terminate upon replacement or removal, unless there's some act of God that destroys the bridge and it'll be replaced by the owner. So I think there is a strong maintenance obligation in there. And I think in the scenario you raise, if, just from a business standpoint, this facility goes downhill, I think that the owner would be obligated to maintain, to fix, or remove the bridges.
I mean, it doesn't sound like it's super tight, but okay. I'm just thinking, like, let's say, whatever, crazy thing. But I mean, all these agreements are only for when things go bad. That's what contracts are for. If everything goes well, you don't need a contract.
Yeah.
Right, so
So
let's say there's a
repair-
problem,
Yeah.
there is an act of God, there is something that hits, a tornado comes through.
Right.
Like, and the owner says, you know what, I'm gonna walk away. Now we've got bridges down in the middle of a road, no one can lease the space anymore, it's technically a town road still. I mean, I'm just wondering what what makes it happen?
Sure. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
At that point, and I would say that would apply to any encroachment, the town would likely, on our dime, remove the bridge and lien the property.
Okay.
So one way or the other, we'd get rid of the bridge and we'd lien the property. So whether it's in the agreement or not. We
Yeah, yeah.
anyway. Like,
Yeah, it is though, but so paragraph 8 says, grantee is solely responsible for all maintenance, upkeep, and repair of the bridge improvements. If maintenance or repairs need to be made, grantee shall notify the town and make any repairs within 60 days of such notice. So there's the maintenance obligation. And then separately, I think in the scenario you talked, so that's not tied to any, operation of the facility. We can't say, well, we're not running it anymore, so we don't have to maintain it. There's no condition like that. And then the indemnity provision, I believe, would also probably apply, if the town took on the liability because the bridge was unsafe, the town had to spend money to fix it. I think that would be part of the indemnity language in the agreement. So.
Thank you. Narky.
I don't have any questions.
Sushima?
I don't have any question either.
Any follow-up? Oh, Chris has one more question.
It's just now that we're talking about inks instead of biopharma, is your ink arriving at building 3 or are you bringing it in and those are highly flammable? So I'm just a little curious. Is that what's moving through the overheads?
If what specifically is moving through?
Ink.
Oh, ink. I would assume so. I'll let Garrett speak.
No ink will be moving through the bridges. It's largely going to be paper product that had already been printed on, and then other like packaging and like best kind of describe. I think they call it it's like a plastic toy, like dice, little figurines, but nothing flammable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2026-200-0, the Morrisville Town Council granting approval to execute an encroachment agreement with Spark Infrastructure Owner LP.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, so I see Sanjay is here, so he will now be the voting member. That's as of 6:57. And so Narky will no longer be a voting member. And we can go on to the presentation. Mr. Martin.
All right. Good evening, Chair Langston and members of the board. Brett Martin here, Transportation Project Manager with the town. I'm gonna wait for Brooke here to pull up our slides. I can go ahead and get started. The first little bit that I have to say, I don't really need slides for that. But so we came to you last with an update on the Comprehensive Transportation Plan development process in April with a preliminary look at general changes proposed for roadway cross-sections, our universe of potential project concepts across all modes to carry forward for prioritization and potential inclusion in the actual plan. Our proposed project prioritization framework, if you remember, and then also our plans for how we planned to engage the public to promote input on and inform the deliverables that I just mentioned. And so let me scroll down here. So for this evening, we are here to share the results of our April engagement effort, a review of the project prioritization framework and the project concepts prioritization results, and the preliminary assignment of roadway cross-sections to specific roadway segments throughout the town's roadway network. And I also would like to introduce Christina Whitfield, who is our project manager from Kimley Horn on this, and she will be speaking with you in just a bit. Just to kind of give you an idea of where we are in the process, we are still in the action plan and documentation phase of the Comprehensive Transportation Plan development process, although we are moving the needle a little bit closer toward being able to bring back an implementation plan and then ultimately from there have a CTP ready for consideration of adoption. So this is our longest, most involved phase. So, but we have done a lot of work that you will see, and we're looking forward to getting any feedback that you might have on what we present today. So now I will turn it over to Christina, and she will take it from here, and well, for a while, and then I will rejoin you.
All right, I will say that it is really hard to follow something as cool as a Pokemon card processing facility, and maybe that's just the early 90s child in me, but I was fangirling a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the CTP, which is, again, justifiably not nearly as cool, but it is very important. If you guys recall, we were with you guys last in April, and we were still in this same plan development process, but we were getting ready to kick off that engagement that hadn't happened yet. So we'll cover all of these different events and activities that we have held since we touched base with you all last, as well as some of the feedback that we heard from council after chatting with you guys, and get into some more of the nuance of what we actually heard from the public and how that's used in what we're bringing back to you today. With our last feedback touch point with both you guys and council, through some of those early recommendations we shared, accessibility and safety were underscored quite a lot in some of those conversations, as well as kind of particularly those two elements as it pertains to our seniors in town. When we talked about bicycle and pedestrian facilities, there was a very strong emphasis on separated facilities instead of in-road facilities. So either that being a street side trail or some kind of formal separation if it were to be a more standard bike facility on the road. There were some mixed views on street connectivity, namely when we thought about the tollway extension connector to Town Hall Drive. And then you guys had a particular keen interest in how, when we're redoing the cross sections, those right-of-way implications may be changing between the last plan and this plan. And then again, just your all's interest in public engagement, and we'll share that here in just a few moments. So phase 2 really kicked off in April and is kind of concluding this week and next with you guys and town council. We had 2 multidisciplinary staff team meetings. So kind of how the sausage gets made of the CTP. This is the folks that roll up their sleeves and help vet everything we're seeing from the data and the public before we bring it back out to you all. We had 1 formal public meeting. We had 2 pop-up events. We were at the Western Wake Farmers Market and Spring Fest. We had 45 online surveys completed. 10 folks took their time to fill out their priorities on our map of recommendations. And then between the Western Wake Farmers Market, the public outreach, the formal event here at Town Hall, and the Spring Fest, we had a little over 100 in-person conversations. The survey was formatted in kind of 2-fold pieces. So as you could see from the numbers on the prior slide, more folks took the traditional survey portion that asked folks about trade-offs of kind of modal priorities, as well as within those modal priorities, what's most important. And we'll get into some of those actual question responses and answers here in a moment. And then it also had an interactive map of all of the recommendations for roadway, bicycle, pedestrian, transit that folks could go and leave a point to tell us if they supported it, as well as any commentary, or a point if they did not support it, as well as any commentary for why. Again, we had 45 folks take the survey portion, which was your more traditional check yes, no, multiple choice type stuff, and then we had 10 folks spend a little bit of extra time with us engaging on the map. One of the things that we asked at both the in-person events and on the survey was about modal priorities in terms of which modal projects the town should emphasize or place more investment in. And you'll see some interesting differences here in how the engagement was gathered and what the results were. So when you look at the survey responses, the folks sitting on their couch on a PC telling us their priorities, we saw the top 3 being pedestrian, intersections, and roadways. But when we were at the in-person events, Western Wake and Spring Fest, we see that flipped where it's transit, bicycle, and pedestrian, and roadways falls to the bottom of the list. I will also say these aren't perfect apples to apples because in the survey format, they were allowed to rank their choices, whereas at the in-person events, they had like fishbowl pebbles and a bowl that they would drop them in. So the tallies there are the total that they collected for those categories. We did do some normalization to try to see if we combined those results, how it would shake out. And you can see here, while the transit, ped, and bike facilities are still at the top, you can see just how close those percentages are. So while we do kind of start to understand some of the priority ranking, we're not seeing huge differences in kind of the order of magnitude across them. When on that interactive map, we showed the roadway projects and allowed folks to express concern or support for them. There were several points of support placed on the roadway map and no points of concern or discontentment. Some places that garnered support: widening along 54, Davis Drive, Lewis Stevens, and McCrimmon, as well as the grade separation at Morrisville, Carpenter, and NC 54. Our bicycle and pedestrian projects was similar format. They were allowed to express support or concern. Again, we had no points of concern noted on the map, and the support was a lot broader on this one than the roadway, kind of more variable. But you'll see some common things there, like the Kit Creek Greenway expansion, Sawmill Creek Greenway, bike lanes on Carrington Mill, that received support from the folks that took the survey. For our sidewalk projects, we have a lot fewer of those, thanks to some good policy. You guys have a very robust sidewalk network in the town of Mooresville, so there's not nearly as many projects. But we did see support for the installation of sidewalks along International Drive, and then installation of sidewalks on that northern portion of Church Street beyond where the current DOT project goes today in the residential communities. And then finally, transit. This is a combination of recommendations from the Smart Shuttle study that you guys did, as well as what's getting recommended at the regional level through Campo and some of the Wake Transit projects. You'll see here that there was support for the BRT service, there was support for the train station, the Smart Shuttle stop at the Indian Creek Trailhead, as well as at the Double Eagles Court. But we did also have one community member express concern about the location of the transit center and any congestion or issues that may be surrounding that, more so than the facility itself, but kind of the impacts to the surrounding area. All right, moving into some of the actual survey result questions. As we were thinking about how we were going to prioritize these projects, we really wanted to know, as we thought about them kind of in their modal buckets, what folks' highest priorities were within those buckets. So when we think about roadway and intersection projects, we asked folks to help us determine what our weighting criteria would ultimately be for the individual metrics. So you'll see here that folks who took the survey rated safety as their highest priority for what we should be considering for roadway and intersection projects, followed by congestion and connectivity, with our two lowest being access to key activity centers and the benefit cost. I will go ahead and kind of spoiler alert, benefit cost is the lowest on all of them. We expect that the public, as much as they want to complain about taxes or costs of things, they don't always prioritize the cost and benefit of a project when they're thinking about something like this. It's a pretty typical response across communities. Similar results for our bicycle and pedestrian priorities. Safety, again, was the top ranked option, with filling gaps being the second. And again, activity center access and benefit cost falling to the bottom of that list. And then transit, the criteria look a little bit different because transit service is so different than what we think about of typical concrete and steel construction for roadway bike ped type projects. So here our criteria were based on travel time, neighborhood access, the connection to multimodal facilities, and then those activity centers again. And you'll see here that travel time and neighborhood access were the highest ranking individual criteria. We'll get to what we did with this here in a little bit, because we wanted to make sure that the folks who took time to engage with us could see how the influence of their feedback goes into the plan, and we'll spend a little bit more time on that in the project prioritization section. So rounding out our survey demographics, of the respondents, 88% of them lived in Mooresville, 39% either worked or owned a business here in town, and 68% play recreate in Mooresville. From an income standpoint, over 85% of our respondents made $50,000 or more a year. And then from a race and ethnic breakdown, 71% of participants were white, 20% were Asian American, and 9% were Black or African American. And you'll see there below, we still did not quite meet kind of the breakdown of the community, but I will say between Survey 1 and Survey 2, we closed the gap a little bit more. The survey was offered in multiple languages, and you'll see there at the bottom, 11% of our respondents were 65 or older. All right, project prioritization. If you guys recall from our last meeting with you, we kind of outlined this process of how we arrived at the recommendations on the maps that you all had the chance to review and that the community had the chance to review. And we vetted those through the public, we vetted those with you guys, we vetted them with the technical team, and we have a couple of refinements to that that are reflected in the versions on your desks today and in your packets. And we have put them through a formal project evaluation process to see what projects rise to the top using those criteria that the community told us were important, and we'll walk through those now. A little bit more background, just as a refresher from our last meeting with you all. We didn't do this in a silo. There's a lot that determines how funding gets distributed in the town for transportation projects. You guys are probably no stranger to this. A lot of our funding comes from folks like DOT and Campo. So as we were considering the prioritization criteria, we wanted to make sure that we were being responsive to those criteria that get measured to send money into the town from our state and federal sources, but also putting in that local taste for what's really important here so that we're not only trying to be responsive to those, we're trying to balance those priorities between the regional and state priorities, as well as what's important to our residents here. So as we think about that, you guys might remember this graphic. We have our criteria across the top, and on the y-axis here, you can see the kind of three areas that were considered. So if it's got the X in our STI and spot category, that means that it's similar to or takes into consideration that statewide criteria and something the state would be looking at to fund a project. If it says LAP, that's Campo, that's our regional entity, so the X's there mean that we're replicating something in their process. And then finally, for each of the criteria, we tied them back to the goals of the CTP that we put in place way back last summer, early fall. You do have full definitions of these in your packets. If anyone has any questions about them, we can get to them at that a little bit later, but you do have full definitions of kind of the more nitty-gritty components of that. For the public outreach, there's 3 key ways that the public feedback informed the prioritization. The first was just in the definition of the metrics themselves. So if you look back, folks told us that safety and accessibility were important, so we made sure that we had metrics built into our prioritization process that considered elements like safety, access to other things, connectivity. We actually used the weightings of some of those priorities to inform the mix of weights that we put on the criteria. So here in another slide, you'll see that we weighted safety, congestion, and roadway connectivity higher than activity center and benefit cost to be responsive to what the public told us was important to them. And then finally, public outreach itself was a criteria point. We did not exclusively use just the 10 folks who took that that map survey. If you guys recall back in phase 1, we had an open-ended map where folks could just complain at us about all of the concerns in town. So we aggregated the 2 together so that we were taking into consideration their concerns as well as whether or not there was an actual support dot in map 2, just so that we could have a bigger pool of data. When we look at those criteria weighting, I won't go through these one by one, but they're here for your all's reference. Like I mentioned, congestion was 18% of the score, connectivity was 16, and safety was 15. And then when we get down there at the bottom, you can see that public outreach made up 4% of the score. We did make an intentional effort to keep that a little bit lower, knowing that if we're all being candid, only 10 people took the map survey, so we don't want those 10 people's feedback to be overly biasing the results of kind of the more quantitative data-driven approach. So in your package, you have the detailed list as well as the map that's here in the presentation. So what you see when this shakes out is when we run a lot of our existing projects that are committed via funding with NCDOT or the town, those still rise to the top, but there's a couple of high priority areas that remain that do not have funding committed to get them complete today. The Morrisville Parkway access management improvements, widening of 54 from Maynard to Cary Parkway, Davis Drive widening for bus lanes as part of that BRT concept, the widenings of Evans, and then several intersections along NC 54 rose to the top. One of the things that we've had a little bit of question about that we wanted to put some context around tonight is on your map you do see some more generic intersection improvements. And with those intersection improvements, one of the things that's really important to consider is at this kind of more macro scale, a townwide study, we can't always get to the exact cause of the issue at that intersection without a much more detailed analysis. But when we think about the types of improvements that would be likely at an intersection, we're thinking things like signalization or traffic control, whether that be roundabouts, changes to the turn lane configurations, access management, limiting turning movements potentially, or managing those turning movements a little bit better, realignment for any of our intersections that have significant skews that may be causing sight distance issues. Alternative geometries is just a fancy way of saying anything other than a standard four-legged intersection. So that could be roundabouts or what might be, you guys, the continuous flow intersections, super streets, whatever words you want to use for them today. And then any upgrades to the bicycle and pedestrian facilities, whether that be enhanced crossings or the actual pedestrian heads and push buttons, or pedestrian refuge islands in the middle of the median so that there's a place to stop for some of these longer crossings that we have. The town is in the process of putting together some additional studies to get into the weeds of a couple of intersections in town to get into this. To be able to get to this level of detail, we have to know how many cars are there, how many pedestrians are crossing, where they're turning, and all of that, which is not something we have access to at this higher level townwide study. All right. When we get into the changes to the roadway recommendations, there's a couple of things I want to highlight here for you guys from between the last plan and this. So new projects, extending Southport Drive from International to McCrimmon, a new roadway connection between Town Hall Drive Extension to Providence Place and Davis Drive at Little. I'll put a little asterisk beside that one because it correlates with the removed project, which is the NC 885 Tollway Extension. So as we were navigating this project, the desire for the tollway was not expressed by Town Council and many members of the community, but continuing to have the ability to have more standard street access as that portion develops and with the new school coming in was still strongly desired. So we reconfigured those connections to still be a new roadway connection, but it'll be more of just a traditional Town Hall Drive type facility than what was envisioned with the original tollway extension project. The Morrisville Parkway access management projects were rolled in, and then another removed project, the Markham Drive project from Paramount to Sorrel Grove is, there's some ongoing stuff there with the town for potential future park, so that's going to be more of a local street serving those projects. All right, final piece of prioritization. We are in the process of prioritizing the greenways independently of the other elements. With this, we're in the process of creating more finite segments. Right now, our greenways in town have just kind of always been envisioned as these big, huge corridors. It's like the Sawmill Creek Greenway, and it's like the entirety of town limits. So we're working to put together segments for the greenway alignments that would have independent utility and would more mimic how you may phase them in construction instead of just ambitiously biting off the whole thing and say we're going to do this whole project. That'll allow us to get a better understanding of which ones would provide the greatest utility in the near term in the event that, we can't go out tomorrow and build a 4-mile section of greenway that easily, as much as we would love to. Some of the criteria that we're using for this: access to community resources, environmental impact, economic impact, whether or not it can be done adjacent to other transportation improvements, and if it provides a good alternative to having to ride a bike or walk along a roadway facility. So stay tuned. All right, last section for you guys are roadway cross sections. As Planning and Zoning Board, this may be one of the sections that you guys spend the most time with because it does come through in our development reviews. And really, these roadway cross sections are super important because they allow us to understand what each street's supposed to do, what we want it to serve. They allow you guys to communicate with the development community and what we need to ask of them as they're putting in to improve their frontages so that it helps contribute to the greater system. They allow us to better improve the system for safety and accessibility. A lot of these cross sections do include our multimodal facilities, whether that be bicycle or pedestrian accommodations. So it allows us to get those built out and incorporated. They allow us to think about how the street itself and the surrounding land use context talk to each other so that we're not putting a giant 6-lane facility in the middle of a residential area. And then again, it just really allows your all's communication and partnership with the development community to be very clear and transparent and predictable so that you guys can continue to attract businesses. But you can also ask of them to kind of pay their fair share into this and help improve the network that they're going in on. So as we think about the cross sections, there are 22 cross sections total. 10 of those are direct carryovers from the 2019 plan, and 12 are new to this plan. For each of the cross sections, when you look at the map with your little legend, there are 4 bases: 2-lane undivided, 2-lane divided, 3-lane undivided, and 4-lane divided. And then from there, there's a bunch of configurations off of them based on whether it has a sidewalk on one side or a side path on one side or a side path on both sides. And those have been vetted to account for some of the existing conditions that have been built since 2019, as well as some planned projects for roads that are already in design, as well as just some modernization to account for how we understand folks want to get around now. I'll pick on the old plan, had some really wide outside lanes with sharrows. I'm a pretty confident cyclist on an e-bike. I'm still not going to ride in a wide outside lane with a sharrow. I would tend to rather be in a bike lane or a side path, and I think that has been an evolution in street design since that last plan was adopted, is kind of just preferences of the traveling public. So we tried to update to reflect those. And as a county, our transit picture has evolved quite a lot since 2019, and there's a lot more recommendations for BRT running through Morrisville than there was then, so we've had to update some of those cross sections to account for how they might handle bus rapid transit. One of the things I do want to call out is that the right-of-way needs for the cross sections, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2, which Brett will get into a lot more detail about, fall within the range of what was in the old plan. So if you're familiar with the old plan, most of the cross sections would have a range for right-of-way. It would say 90 to 110 feet. And it was up to the town through the development agreement to kind of figure out what all of those elements added up to get to that. For this plan cycle, we have gotten rid of the ambiguity of the range and have kind of firm right-of-way requirements tethered to each cross-section. And with the exceptions of one or two that changed because kind of the underlying use of the facility has changed, they all do fall within the range of the prior cross-sections. So with that, I will turn it over to Brett.
All right, thank you, Christina. And just to kind of go into a little bit more detail on what Christina was mentioning about. So when we take the cross sections that we had, agnostic to roadway in the 2019 CTP, and we look at the new cross sections or the updated cross sections that we have now, without looking at roadways, changing what cross section we're going to apply to a roadway, as Christina said, all of the right-of-way needs fall within the applicable previous cross-section right-of-way ranges, but they're also all above the minimum. The right-of-way ranges that we have in the current 2019 CTP, they usually range about 20 feet, and there's a standard cross-section, and then there's like a modified or alternative cross-section for each one. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk you through, okay, well, we do have some recommendations where the cross-section is changing. And because the cross-section is changing, there might be right-of-way impacts. Not on all of them. So really what I'm going to go through is the specific roadways where we do have some type of notable or significant or substantial change to the roadway elements associated with the cross-section that we're applying to specific roadways. And so I will start with Evans Road, which that is moving from what is in the 2019 CTP as a 4-lane section to a 6-lane section. And it most likely will require additional right-of-way needs to do that. That's just a really, really small piece there that kind of, you cross Aviation Parkway there from McCrimmon, and there's that little strip there before you get into Cary. So that's all that would be impacted there. Moving down, Everett Fields Road was added to the network of roadways to which we will be applying cross sections. Previously, it was just a local street designation, which would just be your standard 50-foot right-of-way, 5-foot sidewalks, 12-foot travel lanes, that sort of thing. But we did add a side path from the Shiloh Greenway to Church Street to one of those future bicycle and pedestrian connections across the railroad that we proposed. And so in doing so, this would require some additional right-of-way. Not a lot, it wouldn't be huge, a huge impact, but just to be transparent, it would require additional right-of-way beyond what exists now and what it would have been subject to under the previous CTP. We also added a side path to Mason Farm Road, doing the same thing from Shiloh Greenway to Church Street. Here, actually, the right-of-way is within the range of the previously assigned cross-section for Mason Farm Road, so there's not really much of an impact there. Side paths were also added to both sides of Morrisville Carpenter Road with some potential right-of-way impacts that would happen there. When we came to you, and if you look back at the maps that we shared with the public, we actually had a cross-section that we were looking at there that had a side path on one side and a bike lane and bike lanes. And we kind of went around and around and around on that in the technical team, and we just landed on, let's just do separated side path on both sides. That's a very highly traveled corridor. I don't know, it's pretty high volumes of traffic, a lot of turning movements. I don't know who's going to be using the bike lanes or feel safe using the bike lanes in the roadway facility. The only reason I originally put it in there is whenever you do these sorts of things, separated side paths they take longer to get. They take longer to implement. And so the idea was, we could at least get a bike lane, some type of bicycle facility in there that could be implemented faster, which would be a bike lane. So that's just telling the story there. The cross-section, we are now applying a cross-section to Transair Drive. Again, previously that was a local street designation, not subject to applying a cross-section. There's no additional right-of-way needs there. Odyssey Drive, same thing. And then we also applied a cross-section to Competition Center, Nova, and Dominion Drive to preserve the unique roadway characteristics associated with that combination of segments. There aren't any additional right-of-way needs anticipated there. One thing I will note is that Competition Center Drive is currently a private roadway. It's not been publicly dedicated. So if it were to remain, it would remain private. We are not doing anything to make it public by putting a cross-section on it in the CTP, but it would be subject to the new cross-section with applicable development if it were to be publicly dedicated. So hopefully that all makes sense, and certainly happy to take questions here in a bit. So now I just want to get into next steps. Where do we go from here? You've gotten all this great information, and we're waiting to hear what you have to say back to us about it. But one of the things we still need to do is we still need to follow up with our stakeholders and get their feedback and reaction to a lot of this. So the big ones are NCDOT, Campo, and the town of Cary. But we're also talking about our targeted stakeholders in the community, whether it be the senior community, whether it be religious affiliated organizations, whether it be HSNC, that sort of thing. So we do plan to reach out to them to share a lot of this and get their reaction through the rest of this month and likely into July. We're going to go to the town council and share this same information with them on the 23rd of this month. And then following up from that, we will begin putting together the actual implementation plan. And what I mean by implementation plan is we finalize the prioritization. We are selecting what projects go into the plan. We generally when the time the general timeframes for implementation for them, cost estimates, who's responsible, what are funding sources that are available to implement them, how maybe some of them should be synchronized, because all of this is a big network, and all these different projects have a tendency to work together. And whenever you do something in the network, it tends to have impacts on the rest of the network. So taking a look at that. So generally, that kind of stuff we will be working on, and we plan to bring back in the fall. More than likely, it'll be, we're still working on scheduling for this because the town council has a very busy late summer. But we're looking in the August, September timeframe generally for this. So just to be more specific than what you see on the slide, but it'll be worked out soon. And so it will also go to town council. And then now it's time to hear from you. There are some potential discussion questions on the slide. You know, do the prioritization results align with your understanding of community mobility needs? Are there any concerns not reflected? Have the cross-sections been assigned to the roadways appropriately? That sort of thing. But don't stay within the confines of what these questions are asking. Feel free to go anywhere. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Sushma, do you want to ask any questions?
Not a question, just I have a small concern. So, not a question, I just have a small concern about, how did the online survey was conducted? Because, the participants are only 45 housing, right? 45 people participated on that online survey. So I'm just wondering, how did you conduct that survey?
So the survey is all available online, but the real thing is, okay, how do we get it out for people to be able to participate? So our communications department plays a big role in that. They get it out through social media, they get it out through publications like Next Week in Morrisville, news and notes that our town council gets. They hopefully send it out and send it to a wider audience for people to participate. Just a lot of different, we try to work just a lot of different channels. We also, at the pop-up events that we had, the Western Wake Farmers Market and the Spring Fest, we did a lot of promotion for the survey at those. So to drive participation there. I will say at those events, you saw that we had more than 100 people participate in our event or our activity to put pebbles in jars associated with the different modes to prioritize. Many people that we engaged with at those events were interested in doing that activity. I don't know how interested they were in taking going online and taking a survey. So just different methods like that.
Yeah, I think we need some sort of, model, something like that, that will increase the participation. So we saw the Morrisville, we have about 30,000 population, right? That means that we have about 14,000 housing units, right? Mm-hmm. And online survey, only 45. So, just a concern.
Yeah, I don't like the survey participation either. What I do understand is that it's not uncharacteristic of how other surveys that have been administered by the town have landed. But that doesn't mean that, 45 is not where I want to land. So thank you for that.
Narki?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Sanjay? I saw you
Plenty of questions. But just, I will come back to more of my questions later on, but a couple of quick questions. So, following up on Sushma's feedback, the total number of surveys, if I read your chart correctly, is 269 is the max number between surveys, people who walked in and whatnot. Is that correct?
Yeah. Let me go back.
That would be probably the highest number I saw on one of your charts.
I think that was the number of stones that were put in there, right?
Right.
So
transit is 269, right? These
So
are
that's
not
100. That's 101. Around 101 people that have 10 pebbles to assign to 5 buckets.
So
that's the total count I think that's the total count of pebbles among everybody that participated, if I were to surmise, yeah.
So we are still talking about less than, even if I take 300 there, you're still talking about less than 300 people.
Yes, less than 300 people.
Okay, so that is,
0.3% of it, or it's actually less than that. We have much more than 30,000 people now.
yeah, exactly, right? So that's the first part, right? And I see that you had the, race and those kinds of distribution found out. What was the geographical distribution of people who gave you feedback?
That was not collected. Are you talking about like zip code information?
No, I'm just talking about, we have got 4 districts within Morrisville. So people from which district gave you this feedback?
We did not collect that information.
Yeah.
Folks. We did not ask
Okay.
about their home locations.
Okay. So then, and I think what you said was your criteria, if I go back to the selection criteria of priorities, it talks about public feedback, it talks about town council feedback, it talks about, those would be, I guess, the primary ones, right? And so if you look at what you're saying is the priority list is skewed to town council feedback because you have got less than 1% of 1/10 of 1% was public input. And so your selection of items is primarily driven by town council.
I don't know.
No, yeah, but I'm just saying right now, right? They get to
Is that a question?
final say, right?
Is that a question for us, or are you just?
No, I'm trying to gauge I think there was a comment there. One of the prioritization issues that was mentioned was the fear of traffic flow for the toll extension, right? I'm trying to understand where did that feedback come from? Is it public-driven feedback? Is it based upon cost-benefit analysis? What is it that statement which says, right, that there is a concern of traffic flow into the town? Am I right? That's how it is read. So trying to understand where did that feedback come from?
The removal of the tollway extension was driven by a council request, but I will also say, if you check with DOT, they recently sold a lot of the right-of-way to a developer, an RTP, so the land to even build the tollway extension has recently been sold to a large manufacturing biopharma facility. So town council did not want it, but in reality, the project, if it's going to happen, it's going to be a really, really, really long way away because they're not going to just immediately turn around and rebuy very, very expensive biopharma property. Just thinking pragmatically.
That's, but what you just said was not part of any of this piece. So for us to know that was the driver for the decision is not,
Look, I just want to talk a little bit more about what you're seeing there with the tollway extension and that dashed line, and how we're trying to deal with it. So what you see in the dashed line there, that's the tollway extension. It is in the Campo Metropolitan Transportation Plan in the last decade, so in the 2045 to 2055 decade. So more than 20 years away, if not more. What we wanted to do, what we're at the technical team level with staff, and I think what town council really wants is they want that connectivity with the Town Hall Drive extension up to the north to connect into Providence Place. They want the connectivity between Providence Place and Davis Drive at Little Drive, but they don't want the tollway extension to interact with that. Right.
I hear that. Exactly.
So the idea is, if we have connectivity goals that we would like to achieve.
I'm trying to understand. I get that they don't want it. And my question is why? What are the drivers that are saying that we don't want that connection?
So I can't give you the why, other than anecdotal surmising that, that it would create congestion along the Town Hall Drive extension, bring people in, more cars, more vehicles, more travel into town on the Town Hall Drive facility, which is really not designed to be a facility that functions as an arterial to move cars as much. It serves a lot of neighborhoods, that sort of thing. Now, one of the things that I mentioned when I was here last is it can be modeled. You know, you can model or using origin destination data where trips will actually go if you make that connection. And I think it has been modeled in the past with the last ATP. Maybe that the modeling assumptions would need to be updated, right? Because that was done back probably in 2017, 2018, but it can be modeled.
And I would like to see that modeled result, given that we are not going to extend Town Hall Drive all the way to Morrisville Parkway, given that it ends at Morrisville Carpenter Road, and that we are building the town center, I would like to see what's the modeling would tell you. One, right? Second, if we don't do that, what is the plan to allow traffic flow between the, you know, the, what do you call it? On the other side of the railway line and this side of the railway line? Because the bridges on Carpenter Road and Airport Boulevard are going to take ages to be built, right? So the whole purpose, the investment in Town Hall Center. Now you have, you know, the traffic flowing into it is what? Morrisville Carpenter Road, maybe Airport Boulevard, which is also just between Davis Drive and, you know, Church Street. So what are we afraid of? Because if the concern is that people would be flooding Town Hall Drive, guess what? Almost everybody knows to avoid McCrimmon Parkway, Morrisville Carpenter Road, everybody wants to avoid that because it is a congestion bottleneck. So where is this fear that we are going to somehow flood Town Hall Drive with hundreds of cars in there, right? So I want you to present quantifiable numbers to the public so that they can support or not support. I don't want to hear the anecdotal, well, there is going to be this and there is going to be that. If we are going to work on anecdotal things, then there is no need for the plan, right? We can just keep on, everybody can have their own opinions and make whatever they want to make. Decisions need to be rooted in data.
So let me ask you this. So thank you for that. But let me ask this. What if the tollway extension was not even part of the equation at all? And that's a very real possibility. It's not part of this equation at all. Is there anything wrong? Like, do you see that there's anything wrong with the connectivity that's otherwise being provided here?
Nothing. We would definitely want it all the way to Providence Place. I get it, right? Given that Church Street is congested, every morning when I go to work, I have to deal with that Church Street and McCrimmon intersection with people blocking the roads because the ones coming from Providence Place are trying to make a right turn. The signals are not, optimal, and things don't move along. So we do need that connection all the way. But what I'm also expressing is that we also need much more connectivity to 540, to 40, to Davis, to RTP and others through the town. Regardless of what people think, Morrisville is a thoroughfare for towns down below. You can't escape that. So you have to have as many connections to places where people from Morrisville commute and people from outside cities need to come into Morrisville. That's the reason why I'm saying that dismissing this connector, which is a viable option, right? Davis Drive, there is no connection to Town Hall, to the 885. The only option for people to get there is go through the communities down on Church Street, get onto Hobson Road to 147, that means you are now routing traffic through congested small lanes. So think in that manner, right? When you talked about cost benefit analysis, tell me the cost. Yes, it is not going to happen today. The land will be costly, whatever. But we are still making assumptions that is not rooted in data. That's all I'm trying to make a point, right? Let's present the data to the team, to the public, so that we all can make a informed decision.
Right, yeah, I mean, we can do that. I will say, without, I don't like to make conclusions or draw conclusions about anything without seeing the data. But I will say, I do think it's a push, it's a stretch to think that the origin destination data, which would pull trips down Town Hall Drive from the tollway, in a manner that it would overwhelm Town Hall Drive's capacity.
You think it will overwhelm Town Hall Drive's capacity?
I find it a stretch to think that it would do that. But again, we don't, that's just me kind of understanding the travel patterns and where people are coming from and where they're going. And, again, it's difficult for me to proclaim that without, again, seeing the data and the modeling for it.
Okay, thank you. One last question. You talked about NC 54 widening from Maynard to Cary Parkway. Isn't most of that in Cary?
Yes.
So why is it on the Morrisville priority list?
It's an MTP project.
Sure.
That's what gives the project independent utility, is those termini. So we're not going to put in. There's no such thing as a project from Northwest Cary Parkway to the Morrisville town line, the town limit line. That's not a project with independent utility.
Okay. So is there a...
Didn't Morrisville and Cary several years ago already kick in money to have this study? I mean, we've participated in, like you said, because it does go through both. So I think that's part of the whole thing. Like we have actively worked with Cary on this as a partner, I believe, with DFT with that section of roadway.
I thought that partnership was for widening between Cary Parkway and McCrimmon. NC 54 widening between even.
I mean, I don't know the exact terminations of everything, but yeah.
There's two NC 54 widening projects that are in front of you. One of them is NC 54 from Perimeter Park to Weston Parkway. Okay. The other one is from Cary Parkway to Maynard. The segment of NC 54 between Weston and Cary Parkway is already widened. That is a project to just install access management. So that's not really widened. It's already widened to what capacity it would otherwise ever be widened to. So those are the two widening projects that we have on NC 54.
So we currently don't have a project to widen it between Western Parkway going all the way across from Morrisville Carpenter up to McCrimmon Boulevard?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, so the NC, so if we look at the map, there's an existing and committed project on NC 54 from Shiloh Glen down to Perimeter Park Drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's supposed to be let for construction in 2027. There's a separate project, NC 54 widening from that Perimeter Park Drive to Weston Parkway, all the way down to Weston.
Okay.
Yeah. And then between
But that one is like 1,000 years away.
That's why.
I mean, have they given up on the super street? Have they given up on tearing down 4 apartment buildings? I mean, like, it ain't happening unless they change those things.
It's a project that has been submitted to the statewide prioritization cycle every year. I actually just got results, the scores back from that, for that project within the past week. It did not score well, and the reason it does not score well is because it's so expensive.
Right, because they had to tear down.
It is an assumption of a $143 million project. The widening from Cary Parkway to Maynard is scoring well.
Yeah, because the road already exists.
Yeah, and a lot of the pavement's already there that has been dedicated by development. So,
Okay.
So, I mean, we beat the fact that we don't have a good survey to death, but I guess I had some more. So the whole bike thing, I still can't wrap my mind around, in such a short amount of time, we've changed to having bikes on the road to having them separated off. Because it was not that long ago that the standard was that they were supposed to be in the road. I mean, we've consulted with bike groups about this, and not just random people who are walking around at the farmer's market. I mean, this is an actual thing that has happened in the last 5 years. That bike people would rather be on essentially a wide sidewalk than in the road.
Family-oriented bike people would rather be on a separated facility. Your fearless rider in spandex, even if you have a bike lane on the road, they're not going to use it because it's going to have pebbles and
Correct, okay.
pine cones. They're
And
going
they're
to just
still-
ride in the travel lanes.
right.
That is still the expectation. So the concept of moving it behind the curb and physically separating it is to cater to our very family-oriented demographic in Morrisville. The person riding with their like 5-year-old in training wheels.
So, all right, but those people are still legally allowed to ride in the road.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
State law.
And a similar thing to this refuge island thing. I mean, my understanding of North Carolina law is if there's a pedestrian anywhere in the crosswalk, and it doesn't have, at least the last I checked, had nothing to do with refuge island, you're not allowed to cross the intersection, as that's not still the case.
You still have to yield to the pedestrian in the crosswalk. Yeah.
Anyone in the crosswalk, is the refuge island part of the crosswalk?
The refuge island is part of the crosswalk, but the point of the refuge island is at our larger signalized intersections. So say you have little old lady Mary trying to get across and she's got 26 seconds, but there's no way she can walk across 7 lanes of traffic in 26 seconds. So she's going to stop and catch her breath. Traffic's going to go. Then the walk symbol's going to change again, and Miss Mary's going to finish the next leg.
Look, that's a very practical way of looking at it, but when they run sting operations right on the street down here, they specifically have a person on the far side of the walkway going away from people, and then they bust people from crossing behind them. So, I mean, I just, it's odd to me that I don't know. You can't change the state law from here, but that's always baffled me. But, you know, unless you had Usain Bolt, if someone is 65 feet away, walking away from you, there's no danger. But anyway, all these intersection improvements, are we going to do any of them as a town? Or are we going to, as part of this, are we going to put together a package that will get done like we talked about like 5 years ago?
so whether they get done is a question mark because they cost money and
I understand.
the money has to come.
But some of the money is, it's not that, I mean, we talked about this in the last plan. We went through a little study, we did all these things. With the idea being that for, you know, a small amount of money, there's some low-hanging fruit out there that you could potentially speed things up, and like, we've just done literally nothing. And so we can put it in here again, and I guess not do nothing again, but like, meanwhile, every day, people just sit in traffic that isn't needed, but.
So there's a couple of things to keep in mind with all of that. The majority of our intersections in Morrisville are not our intersections. So,
But we've spent money on
Yeah.
state roads before.
and yeah, and we have, but so most of them are NCDOT intersections, and the only way we're going to be able to do anything for intersection improvements, even if the town wants to pay for it, is if we really bring NCDOT into the process to do the planning for it and to understand what the operational challenges are at those intersections and how best to address those operational challenges.
I mean, have we talked to them about it? Have we talked to the DOT about that?
Not yet.
Okay.
We do have a study from this kind of flowing out of the CTP. There will be, you know, the CTP is prioritizing intersections, and in the implementation plan, we will lay out, okay, here's the highest priority intersections that we want to study further, and we are doing another task to follow up on that, to actually study those intersections further and, to determine what solutions we should bring forward. And through that process, we really have to bring the right people from TOT to the table. Because what happened with the 2021 intersections study is, from what I understand, is there was just a lot of kind of pulling the cart before the horse associated with that process, and how the intersections were selected, whether or not some of the intersections were even really that big of a problem, and then warrant analysis not having been done, which is really what you need to do to get signalization. A lot of those were.
Well, the signalized intersections are the problem. It's not unsignaled, for the most part of it. It's the intersection of Morrisville Parkway and Davis Drive. It's the intersection of, at the train track here. It's the intersection of Chapel Hill Road and McCrimmon Parkway. They all have signals already. When I was coming down 54 earlier today, there was an ambulance trying to turn, and because cars were basically blocking the roadway, they couldn't go. And then when the light changed, 4 cars literally pulled in and blocked the box of the road, right by the fire station. And then they were stopped from going, and then we couldn't go. Just like down here, every single day that I drive through this intersection, 3 people are stopped on the railroad tracks, in the road, pulled way out. Other cars can no longer, they're just not functional.
Yeah.
The police are never there doing anything about it because they decided to concentrate on 35-mile-an-hour Morrisville Carpenter. And there's a dangerous situation. 3 people have been killed at the railroad track in the last 10 years. And every single day, I see people sitting there, and they're not thinking straight. So I doubt that if the signal arms came down, they would do anything other than panic. And so, I don't know what we can do, but it's not only just the movement of cars, it's dangerous, especially at that particular intersection. It's just dangerous. But anyway, that's.
Brett, sorry. Could you maybe take a minute and walk through the map in terms of what intersection projects are committed and what the timeline for that is? Because when you look at the intersections identified, a fair percentage of those do have committed identified projects. And maybe also a little bit of information about the Safe Streets grant that you just applied for Morrisville Parkway.
Yeah, so a lot of the intersections you just mentioned are located along a committed project that is already moving toward being underway. So the black lines that you see there and the black dots are those intersections. We're not going to do anything there as a town because there's already been, NC 54 widening, the McCrimmon Parkway widening, and those intersections that you see there, they've already been designed. They're already at 100%, essentially at 100% designed, and they do entail improvements for operations at those intersections. So those projects specifically are both scheduled to be let for construction in July of 2027. We also have the Aviation Parkway widening project, which is between NC 54 and I-40. That will do some work at the intersection of Aviation Parkway and NC 54, Aviation Parkway, MCR, NC 54.
But not on this side.
But
that's where the
right, not on this side.
I honestly think that I think that people misunderstand the X's in the road and think that is for railroad.
Yes.
That if we just simply erased that and painted little lines like they do in New York City for don't block the box, it would be more successful. And that could cost $5,000. But we can't do it, whatever. But they're not; those projects aren't doing anything to the intersections that I was talking about.
And just to talk about, I travel in India, Thailand, and all of these places where the traffic is 10 times more than here. So for these kinds of places, they actually have LED lightings where it glows that here is the line to stop. Right? And if you cross the LED line, you automatically get ticketed for it. Right? I know we can't ticket it, but at least you make it so obvious to the people that they know where to stop.
Yeah,
and these are
markings
Correct, and these shouldn't take millions of dollars. And we need to find creative ways to improve these intersections, right? We are not talking about massive changes, right? Yes, massive changes will happen 10 years, maybe after I die. But what are we doing now? What can we do now? As we said, paint it red. Do something about it to make it easy.
So keep in mind, we have to follow the MUTCD.
Yeah.
But I have never seen the specific markings that we have here on any road anywhere else in the United States. I mean, maybe that's part of the MUTC. I don't know. I'll get off my intersection soapbox now. It is interesting keeping things moving. So,
I mean, there are more creative things in manual and uniform traffic control devices than what you see in North Carolina. There's also jurisdictions that do things that are not in there, and that gets them in trouble. So it's very, very difficult to do speed and traffic enforcement and expect to be able to issue tickets when you're not following the MUTCD with your traffic control devices.
I mean, we have
In the court of law.
tickets.
So,
I mean, we just talking about that. I mean, we have a 45-mile-an-hour road that has a 35-mile-an-hour sign on it, and we heavily enforce that. I mean, why? I mean, yeah, that's a police thing, but yeah. I mean, Morrisville Carpenter is a 45-mile. I think we can all agree, engineering-wise, it's a 45-mile-an-hour road.
yeah.
But it has a 35 sign on it. But yeah.
And just and to Michelle's point, or she wanted me to hit on the Morrisville
Okay,
Parkway
sorry.
improvements. That the Morrisville Parkway, what you see is access management and operational and safety improvements. That's all along Morrisville Parkway at various intersections, signalizing to intersections, putting in a lot of turn lane storage where turn lane storage doesn't exist, particularly at the currently unsignalized intersections. Some intersection work at the intersection with NC 54 and at Davis Drive. And then some channelization islands as you get to the eastern part of it, toward Park West Village. The town did apply for a Safe Streets for All grant for $10.5 million for those improvements. We have designed 65% of, we've got through 65% design for those improvements as well. And we have acquired funding for the right-of-way necessary for those improvements. So we don't have committed funding for it, but we're actively seeking the funding for it.
Well, thank you for all the information. I'm not going to argue with you. I think you've done a great job. You know this inside and out. I think Morrisville as a city understands the transportation in such depth, and it's documented. It's everywhere. People can come to weekly meetings. There's a book out in the lobby. Everybody has access to the information. If they choose not to participate in the survey, in my opinion, it's not a priority to them. So the people that responded gave you what they felt was important. So don't feel bad. Everybody has a lot of strong opinions on transportation, but we've been doing this for years, and I think you live it day in and day out. We're here for one day a month, so I think you've done an excellent job. I'd say at some point, update the books. Hopefully that's coming at some point. And the only question I had, I mentioned last time we met as well, was around Preston Golf Course with the Greenway extension. Just to either make that correction, because that does have no trespassing signs on it, and I have no involvement with the country club, but I know they try to discourage people from walking on those cart paths. I think it's on number 27 was the Greenway, and it shows that extension going along Crabtree Crossing. If you're going to do something with the sidewalk, that's one thing, but when people see their homes have a Greenway going across the country club, that's all country club where it's drawn.
And one of the things we noted that from the last, you provided the feedback at the last planning and zoning board meeting we came to for this. What you see on the map here is just what we showed, because we were already in the public in that public engagement phase, and so whatever we showed you was also what we carried forward or was already out there for the public. So that's what you're seeing on the map. But yeah, we have noted that.
Okay, yeah, I know it's not on any list that it would be done soon anyway, but just so for clarity, the next time you're updating the books and all those records, that would just ease a lot of people to have stress over it. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as a proud spandex wearing cyclist, what's the plan to protect cyclists as we add more cycling lanes?
So we'll go to those cross sections where we actually are. There's fewer roadway segments that we are proposing actual bike lanes than in the 2019 CTP, because we have gone to that posture of leaning more towards side paths and those off-road facilities. But some do still have, some still have bike lanes attached to them. One of those is Carrington, is that, no, that's not it. That's the old. We actually changed some cross sections where we had the maps that went out to the public, some of those that had bike lanes on it, we took those off and put side paths. So Carrington Mill is one of those. We originally had bike lanes on that. We removed bike lanes and put side path on Carrington Mill. Same thing with Morrisville Carpenter, as I mentioned earlier. The only place where we do have bike lanes proposed is up at Kit Creek. We have, Kit Creek on McCrimmon Parkway, but bike lanes are already on McCrimmon Parkway, and there will actually be bike lanes on McCrimmon Parkway and a side path on the north side of McCrimmon Parkway after that widening project is done. What else am I missing? Bike lanes, Crabtree Crossing,
Watkins Road.
Watkins Road.
I will also say, one of the things that, the comment about how the rights of way are all within those previous ranges, one of the things that we did do as a part of that is narrow some of the travel lanes. And research does show that if the travel lane is narrower, it does help with traffic calming and speeding. So in some of the older cross sections, that outside lane was 14 to 15 feet. That just feels like an Indy drag strip for a driver. So by bringing those back into the 11 to 12 and taking away that extra pavement, research does show in the transportation world that slows drivers down. So for anyone who is a spandex rider who wants to be in the street, that is actually a positive thing, because those narrower lanes do slow drivers down.
I do want to add as well, one thing that we are looking at where bike lanes are the only option, like there's no other option for bicyclist accommodation. We are looking at adding a buffer between the travel lanes and the bike lanes. But one of the things we have to be careful with there is some of the roadways that I just mentioned to you, particularly Kit Creek, for instance, it's mostly a residential thoroughfare. And those residential areas are areas where it's going to be harder to get any right of way. It's already developed. So it's going to be harder to get any right of way. Or if you do add a cross section that requires so much additional right of way, it can cause problems, right? There can be quite an outcry. So we have to look at, well, do we have the space to add that buffer? Now, we're talking just about a 3-foot buffer, but really that amounts to 6 feet in total, right? Because you'll have them on both sides. So that's one thing we are looking at, and hopefully we'll be able to report back on that when we actually share the cross sections. That you'll actually see this is what the cross section looks like and what roadway segment it's going to be matched to. And you'll see in those cross sections, okay, if we're able to do the 3-foot buffer, curb and gutter, bike lane, 3-foot buffer, travel lane, and then you'll see the measurements of feet and all that. So
about buffer, do you mean just like a hatched out?
Yeah.
Like a line? Yeah. Anything else? I mean, we just try to keep it somewhat brief.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I appreciate all the work you do, right? And the staff does phenomenal job. So all my critique and feedback is not about your work, right? It is really about how we all collectively can make this town better. And this thing is also frustration that we talk one thing, but then we do something else, right? So I expect the council to walk the talk. And this is a public forum. I'm trying to represent the voice of the public so that it is heard, it is on record, right? So that's the reason why I'm providing you this feedback, right? And let's hope we find creative ways to make things better for Morrisville and others who travel through Morrisville. So,
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you for the report. It's a lot to take in what I was reading through the other day, so, thank you.
Yep, thank you all for your feedback, and we'll be back. August, September, we'll get that nailed down.
All right, planning, thank you, and on to the planning missile.
The Secretary Dotson's bringing that up. I just want to follow up on the conversation and the discussion a little bit. I think at the staff level, we fully understand the frustration. We drive the streets. We experience them the same as everyone else. But as I was listening to the discussion, I thought it may just be a good opportunity to provide a little bit of an overview again of the timeline of some of the major projects that we do have happening and coming forward. And Brett mentioned the McCrimmon widening and the NC 54 widening projects. Technically, construction on both has started because utility relocation work has started. But when we talk about start construction, we talk about the construction of the pavement itself. But excuse me, construction has technically started with the utility relocates. Both of those projects, again, Brett mentioned, currently, and we all know things do get pushed a little bit. Currently, both of them, are 100% designed, scheduled to let July of 2027. So just over a year from now. So with the McCrimmon widening project, obviously that goes over NC 54. Your Church Street and McCrimmon intersection gets done. Your that hits Town Hall Drive and McCrimmon. It hits Davis and McCrimmon. And remember, there's also a section of Davis Drive that gets done as well. So it extends from McCrimmon to Parkside Valley with the Parkside Valley intersection, getting some improvements there as well. And then NC 54 running from just north of 540, kind of Shiloh Glen, to Perimeter Park. So we're actually having discussions at the staff level about, we understand the frustration of the citizens. We understand the comments that we're getting, and just that everyone's anxious, right? Because they want to see the improvements. We want to see the improvements. But we also have discussions about, we're getting ready to live through 3 to 4 years of construction on 2 pretty significant roads. So that's a conversation that we're having as well, getting ready for that. And then, as soon as those projects wrap up, the aviation widening project gets started, and you're looking at another few years for that to be complete. So there are some good things happening, and a lot of money at the state and regional level coming into the town. It's just going to be a little bit longer. With that, just look forward to the newsletter, and I should have brought it up on the computer because as I get older, my eyes get worse. So let me log in for a second so I can see it on my screen.
Which one do you want to see?
Okay. Sorry, it's taking a minute to load. I did not read that at all. Okay, so it looks like the first one, as this is getting ready to load, is the Hamlet development, which has come in for site plan review. So you may recall the Hamlet development that came before you with a proposed rezoning project probably about a year ago. That project was ultimately denied. Thank you. My computer isn't loading, so Brittany's being nice to me. Went through a number of town council meetings, was ultimately denied. They are coming back with a by right development, all duplexes. So it will not come back before you, but they are planning on moving forward with an all duplex development there in that location. It will still be for rent. In terms of town council approvals, there were a number of town council approvals in the last couple months. The first one was the Novartis rezoning, so that came before you not long ago. The rezoning for the Evergreen Affordable Housing Development was also approved. And then there were a number of agreements related to the construction of the new middle school and high school that needed modified because of the swap of school sites and some other stuff. And so those agreement modifications were approved to facilitate that construction. New site plans that came in and were approved. One that we haven't talked a lot about is a creek stream restoration project that is going to be going on kind of back on Church Street, kind of historic Christian church area, back kind of towards the Myers Point area. That project was approved, stream restoration, and a segment of the greenway going in with that as well. And then we saw in the last couple months some significant progress on some of our special projects. The rental assistance program that Josh has been working on, that did launch, and we're starting to see applications come in for that program. Airport Boulevard Phase 1 construction has started. You may have seen some of the tree removal associated with that. And then the public art initiative that Brittany is spearheading. I believe you're aware that the butterfly was chosen as the icon. The mold has now been designed and approved, so we're into fabrication, and we'll be releasing artist applications next week. So that's an update.
Thank you. Board comments? Sanjay?
No comments.
Good presentation. Thank you, guys. So I guess I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? Arthur seconded. All in favor? Aye. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We're adjourned.